Have you ever stopped to think about what it means when a rosary breaks? For many, it might just be an accident, a simple failure of the object. But what if I told you that, according to the view of Padre Pio, the breaking of the rosary carries a deep spiritual meaning? It's not just a moment of loss or wear, but a sign, a call for us to reflect on our faith and spiritual path. The rosary, one of the greatest gifts the Church has given us, is more than just a string of beads. It is a direct link to God and the Virgin Mary. When it breaks, it might reflect a fragility in our spiritual life, but it is also an opportunity for us to renew our devotion and strength. Curious to know what Padre Pio might say about this? Keep reading, and let's explore this perspective that could transform your understanding of the rosary. Some see a broken rosary simply as a snapped thread and scattered beads. But what if there's more to it? The spiritual world communicates in subtle ways, and a break like this might carry a profound meaning. It could be a call to renew our faith, a sign that something in our spiritual life needs to be restored. Just like a link that snaps, perhaps it's time to reassess our walk with God, strengthen our prayers, and reestablish our connection with the divine. After all, is your devotion firm, or does it need repair as well? The rosary is not just an object, but a tool of connection with the sacred, a reflection of the spiritual journey of those who use it. When it breaks, it may indicate the need for a closer look at one's own faith, like a mirror revealing what needs attention. Has something seemingly simple ever awakened a deep alarm within you? A broken rosary might be just that sign. Maybe it's time to intensify your Bible study, return to a devotional habit, or even reconcile with Christ. Many saints and devout individuals have reported experiences where small events led to profound spiritual reflections. Padre Pio, for example, saw the rosary as a weapon against evil, and when a weapon breaks, it needs to be reinforced. The same applies to Christian life. If spirituality has worn down, it's not a time for discouragement but for strengthening. And how do we strengthen it? With prayer, with praise, with testimonies of faith that rekindle the flame of devotion. What if there was a way to turn this moment of breakage into a new beginning? The rosary is not just a religious accessory but a spiritual bridge between the faithful and God. Each bead that slides between the fingers is like a step toward the divine, a continuous dialogue that strengthens the soul. How many times does the mind wander during prayer? The rosary, with its repetitive and meditative structure, helps center the heart and maintain focus on God's presence. It's not an empty practice but a powerful method that, when lived with faith, transforms spirituality into something tangible, real, and deeply intimate. Many people find refuge in the rosary during times of distress. Amid the chaos of life, holding the rosary and reciting its prayers can bring an inexplicable peace, as if the soul is embraced by a loving presence. This happens because constant prayer creates a spiritual environment where God can act. Just like an athlete who trains daily to strengthen muscles, the Christian who prays the rosary strengthens their faith and resilience against temptations and spiritual challenges. What if there was a way to make this practice a daily habit? Saints and spiritual leaders have always recommended the rosary as one of the most effective means of drawing closer to God. Padre Pio himself, known for his intense prayer life, called the rosary his weapon. He understood that the repetition of the Hail Marys was not mechanical but a true shield against evil and a way to stay spiritually connected. Those who make prayer a habit notice that faith strengthens effortlessly. What if there was a hidden secret in this practice, a secret that could completely transform your spiritual life? Padre Pio didn't just recommend the rosary, he lived it intensely. He said the rosary was his weapon, and those who saw him knew he was never without one in his hands. This stigmatized saint, who saw spiritual realities beyond what the eyes could see, understood the power in repeating this prayer. For him, each Hail Mary was a blow against the spiritual enemy, a shield of protection, and a way to remain in constant union with God. It wasn't just devotion, it was a daily commitment to heaven. If Padre Pio, a man who conversed with angels and faced spiritual attacks, trusted the rosary as his defense, what about us? Modern life is full of distractions, challenges, and invisible battles that affect our faith. The Rosary is not just an old custom, it's a safe refuge against spiritual storms. Many who follow this teaching notice profound changes: more inner peace, clearer spirituality, and greater resistance against temptations. What if there were a way to make this practice as natural as breathing? Padre Pio's dedication to the Rosary was so intense that, even in his final days, he still held it firmly. He didn't need to speak about its importance anymore. His life was already a testimony. When someone asked how many rosaries he prayed a day, his answer was simple: many. This shows that the Rosary has no limit. There's no such thing as too much when it comes to prayer. What if this practice were taken seriously, as he taught? What miracles might happen? Sacramentals are small spiritual treasures that often go unnoticed. Unlike the sacraments, which were directly instituted by Jesus Christ, sacramentals are blessings, sacred objects, and rites that the Church recommends to strengthen faith. The Rosary fits into this context. It is not an end in itself, but a powerful means of leading the soul to God. It doesn't have magical power, but when used with devotion, it becomes an instrument of spiritual transformation. Just as a sacred book is more than paper and ink, the Rosary is more than beads and threads. The Church has always encouraged the use of sacramentals to aid the Christian journey. Holy water, scapulars, medals, and the Rosary itself serve as physical reminders of God's presence. They don't replace prayer, but they help keep the mind and heart focused on heaven. Who hasn't felt more strengthened by holding a Rosary in difficult times? The simple act of touching it can rekindle the flame of faith. But what makes these objects so special? It's the intention with which they are used, the commitment to spirituality, and the faith placed in them. Padre Pio saw the Rosary as an extension of his own prayer life. He knew that true power lay in surrendering the soul to God, not just in the object itself. When someone treats the Rosary like a charm without spiritual engagement, it loses its purpose. But when it becomes a channel for living faith, it becomes a shield against darkness. So, how can sacramentals truly impact spiritual life? The answer lies in consistency, understanding, and the heart of the one who uses them. Some underestimate the power of the Rosary, but those who have experienced its strength know it is more than just a religious object. How many stories have we heard of people escaping physical and spiritual dangers by taking refuge in the prayer of the Rosary? There are accounts of missionaries spared in times of persecution, families protected from disasters, and even people who, by adopting this practice, saw their lives take a new direction. The Rosary is not a physical shield, but a spiritual armor, capable of enveloping those who pray it in an invisible barrier of protection. Many saints and exorcists report that the Rosary is an effective weapon against evil forces. It's no coincidence that even the devil fears this prayer and tries to discourage it by all means. When someone feels spiritually weak, in doubt, or surrounded by difficulties, the Rosary may be the quickest way to restore inner peace. Praying a Rosary in moments of anxiety or fear can transform the atmosphere of a room, bringing serenity and confidence. After all, when you hold the Rosary, it's like holding the hand of Mary. What greater protection could there be? The promise of the Virgin Mary at Fatima reinforces this truth. She guaranteed that those who prayed the Rosary with devotion would receive special graces and protection from dangers of both soul and body. But for this to happen, commitment is required. It's not enough to pray it only when fear arises or problems appear. The true power of the Rosary manifests when it becomes a habit, a spiritual fortress built day by day. What if there were a secret to making this practice a constant in life? A broken Rosary might just be an accident, but what if it's a sign? How many times does something seemingly trivial hide a deeper meaning? Just as a thread can break from wear over time, faith can also weaken when it's not nourished. Perhaps the breaking of the Rosary is a reminder to look within and ask, how is my spiritual life? Many people go years without realizing that their relationship with God is weakening, until something happens to catch their attention. A broken Rosary could be that call. When a rosary breaks, there are two options: leave it aside or restore it. The same happens with faith. In the face of difficulties, some abandon their prayer life, while others choose to rebuild it. What to do when spirituality seems worn out? A good start is to return to simple habits, such as setting aside daily time for prayer, seeking Bible reading, and attending church more regularly. Restoring a rosary requires patience and care, just as restoring faith requires dedication and surrender. But are we attentive to these signs? If a broken rosary is seen as an alert, it can become a new starting point. Perhaps it's time to deepen devotion, seek more knowledge about Christianity, and live faith with more intensity. Small details can carry big messages, but it all depends on the eyes of the one who receives them. After all, aren't the breaks in our spiritual life really invitations for renewal? The rosary is not a simple accessory, and those who use it with devotion know the value it carries. Like any sacred object, it should be treated with respect, for it symbolizes a direct connection with God. Unfortunately, many leave it tossed in drawers, hanging from car mirrors just as a decoration, or handle it carelessly. But if something is important to spiritual life, shouldn't it be treated with more care? Taking care of the rosary is taking care of one's own faith, for it represents a commitment to prayer and to the divine presence in everyday life. If a rosary breaks, what should be done? Throwing it away without reflection may waste an object that has been a channel for many graces. If possible, it should be restored and continue to be used with the same devotion. If it cannot be repaired, the best way to dispose of it is respectfully. It can be buried in a dignified place or given to the church. The same principle applies to any sacramental. How we handle these sacred objects reflects our relationship with spirituality. After all, it's not just a set of beads and threads, but an instrument of faith. Beyond physical care, there's also respect for its purpose. The rosary should not be used as a superstitious amulet, but as a true tool of prayer. With each Hail Mary, with each mystery contemplated, it becomes a spiritual shield. This is why so many saints carried it with them, as a reminder that prayer is a daily necessity. And if simple care for an object can say so much about someone's faith, what does it teach us about how we treat our spiritual lives? The rosary is not a practice to be done occasionally, but a continuous prayer, a daily walk with God. By beginning to pray every day, the rosary prayer becomes a constant source of spiritual strength. For many, this doesn't mean just reciting words, but entering a state of deep meditation and contemplation, where each mystery is an opportunity to reflect on the life of Christ and the challenges of one's own journey. When prayer becomes constant, it takes root deeply in the soul, strengthening spiritual resistance against life's temptations and tribulations. In times of difficulty, many people remember to pray a rosary, but what about when things are going well? The true strength of the rosary lies in using it as an ongoing habit, not just as an emergency resource. This type of practice creates constant spiritual resilience, like a soldier who trains every day to be ready for battle. When you pray frequently, the rosary goes beyond simple routine. It becomes an unbreakable spiritual shield, always ready to protect us from the enemy's attacks. What have you done to keep this practice alive in your life? The key to cultivating this daily practice lies in consistency. It doesn't matter if you start with 5 minutes or an hour. The important thing is to maintain regularity. If you commit to praying the rosary every day, it will begin to transform your life. Each prayer, each Hail Mary, and each mystery will be an opportunity to refill your soul and strengthen your spiritual resistance. How can you make the rosary part of your daily routine in a simple and effective way? The answer lies in persistence and discipline. The rosary, as we know it today, has a rich and deep history, stretching back centuries of faith and devotion. Its origin is tied to the practice of prayer and meditation on the mysteries of Christ's life. In the beginning, Christians prayed psalms and repetitive prayers, but the way the rosary took shape was the work of Saint Dominic in the 13th century. He had a vision in which the Virgin Mary taught him to pray the rosary as a powerful tool to combat the heresies of the time. Since then, The Rosary spread, becoming one of the Church's most beloved and effective devotional practices. Over the centuries, the Rosary was adjusted and refined, with new mysteries added by popes like St. John Paul II, who introduced the Luminous Mysteries in 2002. This evolution shows how the Church continues to view the Rosary as a vital form of prayer. However, the essence of the Rosary has never changed. It remains a means of deep meditation, a way to know more about Christ, and a powerful weapon for those who use it with faith. Therefore, the Rosary is a practice that carries centuries of history but remains continually updated to serve Christians of all times. What many don't know is that before the Rosary as we know it today, the Church also had similar practices, such as the Psalter, a prayer that involved the repetition of psalms and prayers in a simpler form. It was only over time that the Rosary became established as the popular prayer we know, with the beads symbolizing the prayers that are repeated. And if we think about it, each prayer of the Rosary leads us to remember central moments in the history of salvation. The origin of the Rosary teaches us that the repetition of prayers is not an act of emptiness but a way to deeply immerse ourselves in the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. Many people have sought true transformation in their lives, and one of the most powerful ways to achieve that change is through the practice of the Rosary. It's not just a repetitive prayer, but a path of deep reflection and inner change. Each time you pray the Rosary, you are invited to meditate on the mysteries of Christ's life, His death, resurrection, and the intervention of the Virgin Mary. These moments of prayer may be the key to opening your heart and transforming areas of your life that still need healing or renewal. The Rosary is an invitation to daily conversion, to the renewal of the Spirit. When someone begins to pray the Rosary regularly, something begins to change inside them. The very act of meditating on the divine mysteries brings out the deepest and truest aspects of each person. It is not uncommon for those seeking personal conversion to report spiritual growth through the prayer of the Rosary. The daily practice starts to create a new perspective on life, where goodness, forgiveness, and the desire to live Christ's teachings become more natural. It is a practice that shapes character and transforms the interior of those who adopt it consistently. Perhaps the secret to personal conversion lies in how we treat the Rosary prayer. It is not just a way to ask for blessings or favors, but to live a life closer to what God desires for us. If each day you dedicate yourself to meditating on the mysteries and allowing them to shape your actions, you will be walking a path of true conversion. It is not just words, but a change of heart. And the question is, are you ready to allow the Rosary to become a path to personal and spiritual transformation? The Christian life is filled with spiritual battles, and often we don't realize the challenges we face until we are immersed in the midst of them. The Rosary, with its prayers and mysteries, becomes a powerful weapon in this field of spiritual warfare. When temptations, difficulties, and crises arise, the Rosary offers protection against the forces that seek to draw us away from God. It's not an exaggeration to say that the Rosary can be the shield that protects us from the enemy's attacks, a constant reminder that God is with us in every battle. By praying it, the Christian strengthens themselves, resisting the assaults of evil. Spiritual battles don't just happen on a physical level, but also in our emotions and minds. How many find themselves overwhelmed by anxieties, doubts, or fears? The Rosary brings deep relief in these situations. As the mysteries are contemplated, the mind and heart calm, allowing the Christian to find peace amidst the storm. And even when adversarial forces seem powerful, the Rosary acts as a reminder of the divine strength that is always by our side. To fight with faith doesn't mean ignoring difficulties, but facing them with the certainty that God is greater than any challenge. In times of crisis, when temptation feels strongest or faith wavers, many Christians testify that the Rosary was their lifeline. It not only helps resist evil, but also strengthens faith, bringing clarity and wisdom for difficult decisions. If you find yourself in a spiritual battle, whether internal or external, don't underestimate the power of this practice. The Rosary is more than just spoken words. It is a battlefield where you, with Christ's strength, can triumph. What have you done to use this tool in your own battles? Marian apparitions have been significant moments in the history of the Church, and many of them are directly connected to the practice of the Rosary. Our Lady, in her messages, has always invited us to pray the Rosary, for it is a powerful tool of intercession. In Fatima, for instance, she appeared to the 3 little shepherds and urgently asked them to pray the Rosary every day for peace in the world. This invitation from Mary reflects the essential role the Rosary plays in our lives, not only as a personal prayer but as a way to unite Christians in a plea for protection and divine grace. The Rosary prayer, when said with faith, draws us closer to Mary, our Heavenly Mother. The connection between the Rosary and Marian apparitions is not just historical, but deeply spiritual. During the apparitions, Mary presents herself as an example of humility, love, and constant prayer, and by inviting us to pray the Rosary, she calls us to imitate these virtues in our own lives. The repetitive prayer of the Rosary allows us, like Mary, to enter deep meditation on the mysteries of salvation, aligning our hearts with Christ's and His Mother's. Praying the Rosary, therefore, is not merely following a request, but an opportunity to unite ourselves with Mary's mission, interceding for us and for all humanity. The impact of the Rosary in Marian apparitions isn't limited to the past. Even today, many faithful, when praying the Rosary, report feeling a stronger presence of Mary in their lives, as if she were truly interceding for their intentions. Marian apparitions continue to remind us that the Rosary is a vital spiritual instrument, one that not only strengthens faith, but also brings grace and protection in times of need. When we pray the Rosary with this understanding, the practice becomes more than just a prayer. It becomes a direct connection with Mary and with the sacred mysteries of Christ. Now that you've discovered the profound meaning behind the Rosary's breaking and how it directly connects to the renewal of your faith, what will you do with this knowledge? The Rosary is not just an object, but a practice that draws us closer to God and strengthens our spirit. Are you taking full advantage of this prayer's power in your life? Why not start today by reflecting on your own relationship with the Rosary and incorporating this powerful devotional practice into your daily routine? Don't wait any longer. Transformation begins when you dedicate yourself wholeheartedly. If you want to learn more about how to strengthen your faith and transform your life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue receiving teachings like this. Let's walk this journey of faith together.